audio video. I'm joined by the much better looking Ben Goff from Cinema Bureau. He denies it, but I think deep down he knows it. He was
You
hard
say
on
it every
himself
week, and
earlier.
I'll defend it every week.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to keep saying it until you believe it, because believing in one's self-beauty is the first step to success. Come on, Ben. Let's get real here. Today we're going to be talking about, can you have too many speakers? How many speakers is the right number of speakers? And is it always better to have more speakers? My answer to that is no, and I think Ben would agree. It's got to be properly placed, and more speakers can actually be a negative. But we're going to talk about that. We've got some examples of how all of that's going to play out. Should we just jump right into it?
Yeah, I mean, that's it's sort of boring, but we're going to agree, isn't it? It would be more fun if we disagree.
We agree every time. Even when you think we're going to disagree, we agree every single time. You're like, oh, Ryan's going to not agree with my controversial opinion. Then it turns out that it's not controversial and we all agree on it. But
we'll try and cut that out. We should find a topic that we fundamentally don't agree on.
I don't know that that's going to be hard, because we're both rooted in objectivism and science. So that's going to be difficult to find. But let's start on this. So, did you just send me this image? Is that what you sent me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We might need it later.
Okay. How do you want to start? You had ChatGPT make something.
Well, first of all, let's just go back to where you started. You just said that you don't always think more speakers is more betterer.
Yes.
That's correct English, isn't it? More betterer.
More. That's the US way, which is the right way.
Okay, yeah, fine, good. I was with someone the other day who said that they love The Office, and then they said the US version. I mean, that's not more betterer, but I digress.
We're not smart enough to understand all of the really unique tropes and stuff that you guys take in. We need kindergarten level comedy.
Obvious comedy.
Yes.
Right. So you just said more speakers is not always more betterer.
Mm-hmm.
Run with it. Why?
Improper placement. Things can be too close. Things can be incorrect angles. There's many, many different issues that you can run into. But mainly it's positioning. I mean, positioning in a lot of this matters tremendously, even when people don't think it does. And as an example, if you've got a speaker that's right on top of you, because your couch is against a back wall or something, and that may be a compromise for your room, putting a rear channel that's right next to your head may not be the correct approach.
Right.
So we've got some examples, but I think you actually have a video of the object viewer.
Yeah. Is that where you want to start?
Around. I think that's a good way to start, so that people can see what happens and what's actually going on.
Okay. So give me a second and work out how I'm going to share that screen. That is going to be...
I really don't like these headphones because they're sealed headphones. And I feel like I'm talking louder than I normally am.
Right.
The other one's broke. Okay. We got it
up. Look at that. So this is screen one at Foundry. So that's our actual layout. Hopefully... the film I queued up is still queued up. There's every possibility, and of course.
Oh, we're going to watch this live.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got to now reselect a film because I left it ages ago, and it's now obviously not queued up anymore. And I can't be able to walk into the other room to go and find it. But it's all right. I've just found play. I'm going to jump in one scene. Let's jump in two scenes. Let's jump to about there. Right. Give that time to start playing.
And this is
I need to turn on.
There it goes.
There we go. So I think it's quite key to understand what all these different channels do, right? So everything here that is a yellow dot is an object that's moving.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see, so there is one down the middle of the right-hand side and the left-hand side, so about halfway down. They've been locked to a specific position. So you can see that they're not moving. Okay, actually just moved. Maybe it wasn't locked, but they're pretty much static. So they're being used as objects, but they're not actually moving. They are always coming directly from the side.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit?
Yeah, I reckon I can. Let me go.
Just use the zoom in button in the Chernov visualizer.
Oh, you can use that one. Right, fine.
Yeah.
So you will see over here. Can you see this one?
Mm-hmm.
It's not moving. So they wanted to specifically place that on that side, and it's just always there. So it is being rendered as an object, but it's not moving. Everything else around there is actually moving, and I haven't even got any amplifiers switched on, so I can't tell you how much action is happening in this scene. But there's a chunk of stuff moving, and at different points, let me work out roughly where we are in this film that I've started. Give me a second. Let me just fast forward it a touch.
Can you say what film this is?
Yeah, it's Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat. So we're somewhere around the first invasion at the moment. I reckon we're now right in the middle of the first invasion, considering there's a load of stuff moving again. But what I think is really important here is if you watch these bits that are panning, they are literally starting at the screen and panning all the way down that sidewall. So this is where more speakers is more better, right? If you've only got a 5.1, that sound can come off the screen, it can get to a side position. It can't move neatly along the wall. It can't get behind you. It can just jump. It's gonna go.
Let me add some context to what you said. If properly placed and integrated, more speakers is absolutely better. Absolutely. No question. If they're properly placed, the room has the proper space for them, they can be properly integrated into the system. Would you agree that virtually every time more speakers, if properly integrated, is better?
I can't think of a time when with the seats in the right place and adding more speakers wouldn't be. No, that's not true. There is an exception, possibly. And it becomes an exception that then you move forward beyond it again. So 6 overhead channels is a possible exception.
Did you see what Denon just announced?
Not sure I have,
with the channel expander.
No,
so
I've not
the channel
seen
expander, if you have that situation where you have 6 tops and a movie is encoded to only use 2 of them, where it'll only use the middle 2, Denon's and Marantz's new channel expander will now put that to all 6.
Just duplicate it to all 6.
I don't know how it works. I don't know. It's part of the new series, like the 3900 line that just came out from Denon. But it looks like the industry has talked about this enough that they're recognizing it and trying to come out with ways to move around it and to fix it. Now, I don't know. That could theoretically, and I think you would agree, cause some problems depending on how it's integrated and how they're doing the decode and what it would do with the SPL and all of that. But I think it is a step in the right direction. And I do agree, depending on the content, the top channels, it could be a step backwards, but I think that may be a compromise that I'd be willing to deal with to have more of a laid out base layer.
Stop that video because this film I've queued up doesn't do it. So it's not a good example. But you're right. What often happens is the engineer may have chosen to mix to 4 overheads, and then those middle 2 never get used. It's like nothing. They only ever bring things up to the front and they bring things from the back, but they never actually utilize the middle pair. So they're just not getting used.
Or it's the other way and they only mix for the 2.
Exactly that. The other way and they only use 2. And then that probably gives a smaller image, a smaller sound stage than if it used 4.
Yeah.
So I guess that's not really a problem. If you have the opportunity and you know what the film's going to do, you could turn them off. Like I could go into Trinov and turn off the middle pair. I'm never going to do it.
I'm never going to do that.
When we go beyond that, so I said it's a temporary problem because actually we often go to 8 or even 10. We'll put in ones that are used for DTSX. Once you go to 8, the problem starts to go away a bit because things that objects that move up the wall gain some height, suddenly start using the front heights, and that dimensionality grows again. And you don't, it really is only a problem moving from 4 to 6 that some films kind of take a step backwards. But otherwise, so right, here's the other thing, and it's a budget conversation. So more speakers will need more budget, or it might make things worse. You know, this is right. How many people think that home theaters can't play stereo music? Well, if you spend $10,000 on a 2-channel system, or $10,000 on a 7.1.4, 7.1.4 is not going to keep up with a 2-channel of same value.
Yeah, depending on where you throw your money, you could. I could argue that you could make that one that could do it. But I know what you mean. If you get quality $10,000 speakers, like objective quality speakers for $10,000, yeah, they're going to outrun.
Well, I mean whole system budget, right? Let's just say
I know what you mean.
I'm just starting at a bottom, right? If you're buying a 2-channel amp and 2 speakers for $10,000 against having to buy 11 speakers, 11 channels of processing, realistically, that budget is not going to then do music as well, because you've diluted it. And the same will happen as that channel count grows. If you want to keep the objective quality, the likelihood is you're going to need more money. You can't just keep diluting the money into more channels.
I want to take a step back and talk about, because you said, you know, you're diluting it into, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, into movies, especially if you're just watching movies. I want to talk about briefly why you may notice when you go to music. And people may, well, it's still sound. Why would you notice? Well, the reason, and this is, Ben, you may agree, you may not. The reason that I think people don't listen to 2-channel more in their theaters is because, and this isn't a bad thing, maybe they're not into 2-channel. I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are, or there's less now than there were, is because 2-channel's more intimate. If you're going to notice issues, it's going to be in a 2-channel environment, right? Because your brain doesn't have as much to take in. It doesn't get overloaded. Issues don't get masked as you don't have sound coming from all these different directions. It's much easier to pick out. And this is why when I do speaker demonstrations, like if we're doing something objective and we're doing it blind, I actually do it mono and I do it with no sub, because it allows you to finitely focus on one thing. And the less variables you have to focus on, the easier it is to identify shortcomings of a system. So when you're listening to a 2-channel, you may go, I don't really like 2-channel. And a lot of people will come in and say, well, I just don't like 2-channel music. You throw that into a really well-integrated room, and I think the room has a huge part of this,
right?
And a really well-done 2-channel system. And a lot of people will really enjoy 2-channel music. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood that I think that's what you were getting at, that you're going to identify shortcomings in a system when you're spreading them out like that. And it's easier to mask it because we're terrible multitaskers as people. So being able to identify issues as objects are moving around everywhere, it's a lot harder than you think. We get overloaded, and it's not a bad thing. Frankly, it's a good thing because you can get away with more in a way, though. Taking that quality, you're going from a 2-channel system and putting that same quality into a multi-channel system, it gets, word of the day, more better, right? It does get better. Your disability to identify shortcomings as a human, a machine can absolutely do it. As a human gets objectively more difficult the more speakers and the more active the space is.
Yeah,
Agree?
I guess.
Disagree?
I guess there's an interesting thing there of how 2-channel behaves if you've made a dedicated theater room. So my gut feeling is that the people who treat their rooms almost certainly over-treat them by a long way. They end up way too dead. And to an extent, you can mitigate that a bit with more channels. If there's recorded ambience, right? You've got more opportunity to hear that recorded ambience and hear some directionality and some scale of it, and not end up with this really collapsed small downstage. If you're going back to 2-channel in that same room, the likelihood is there's more expectation that some of that scale is going to come from room reflections. Like the presence there is still recorded in, but you've not got this three-dimensionality coming from all these different speakers. So if you've cut down all those room reflections excessively, I think 2-channel might suffer more than multi-channel.
I would agree. Now, it could be, because there are customers like this that like an overtly dead room. So I'm not saying that if you like it, it's wrong. Some people like the pinpoint accuracy of this is where everything is, and they don't want to hear that surround. And if that's you, great. But to me, once you get into a space like what Ben is describing, it's transformative.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can agree. Maybe we found something we can disagree on.
What?
If you've got a room that's overly dead, it's just bad. I mean, that's just objectively bad.
I agree that it's objectively bad. I'm saying that subjectively, if you like that, it doesn't make you, a bad person. Do what you want to do. I'm saying that's what I mean.
Yeah,
so
I know.
We still agree. I'm just saying, don't think that it's wrong. I mean, to me, it is. People need to realize you do you, even if it's objectively incorrect. Do you, because it is your space. It's your experience. Don't use that. What I argue is use this as a baseline and then deviate to your own subjective taste, whatever that may be. If it's on the objective baseline, great. If it's not, I'm not coming over to your house 7 days a week to listen. So you do you.
Yeah. So now might be the time to use this image that I've given you to answer the question that's just come in, or the point that's just come in from Drew. I want to make a point on it. So we're about to show an image of a room that has been put through some AI to try and anonymize it. We're not beating up on this specific room. It's a concept of, it is a real room. It was found on Instagram. I don't know who made it, but we just found a room on Instagram and we've run it through AI to try and make it so you can't recognize it. But the point that we'll make about it will be valid. So have you got that?
So Drew's question is, should test this at M-Wave have a setup that you can keep playing the same track with a different layout, 5.1, 5.1.2, 7.1.4, 9.1.6, see if people can actually tell the difference.
So can people tell the difference between these channel counts? In this room we're about to show you, that this is now not real because it's gone through AI. It's probably the sum of 10 different rooms because AI has remade it, but the speaker layout is roughly real. Have we got it?
I'm getting it. Patience. There you go.
So in that room, if you took those surround backs out, or if you have those surround backs, you'll know. Like, there's nobody that's going to sit in that room and not know if those surround backs are on or not. They're close to the seats. So if you're sat in seats 2 or 3, or how many is there in there? 6. So
6.
If you're in any of those seats that are flanked, like you've got a rear surround back on like a headphone.
Nah, if you sit in any of those seats, you'll know if those surrounds are on or not.
No, I don't know. I reckon if you sat, we're going to talk about dispersion in a minute, but I reckon if you've sat in the 2 end ones, you probably can't hear those surround backs at all anyway. I reckon they're excessively loud in the middle 4 seats.
Oh, those aren't
almost inaudible in the 2 end ones.
Those aren't dipoles, are they?
No, they're not.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Yeah, I don't know that you'll be able to hear those. Never mind.
No. So we can now take that pitch down because we've made the point. The question of can you actually hear them in a really perfect layout, it does become more immersive. This bubble of sound gets better. The time where they're most strikingly obvious is when they do something that's not pleasant. And if you've got speakers right next to you, it's going to become not pleasant really quickly.
I would argue my thing with, not against you, my thing is if I can identify where a speaker's specific location is, it's maybe not done as well as I'd like it to be.
I think that's true. I think that's fair.
If I can say that's where the speaker is, I don't like it. It breaks the immersion. And I don't think to me, and people will argue with this, and this is my opinion. Jonathan and I, the gentleman Archaea, who I stream with on whenever we have time. I can't say when because I have no idea. Whenever we stream, my argument is specifically about bass. I don't want to notice too much bass, or I don't want to sit here and say that's a lot of bass. I want it to be an immersive experience, whereas it is part of the experience, right?
I'm just laughing because of the irony that you're like, of all the people to be sitting there saying, I don't want to hear too much bass. It's the guy with the 60-odd, 64 is it these days, whatever it is. Like, I mean, come on. No. I'm going to call, like, I spent last week doing some training, and honestly, I use the word bullshit too much. We're going to have to, there's a show in the UK where they have a thing called a bullshit alarm, and every time he hits it, the little machine just goes, bullshit.
No.
We're going to need one. What do you mean you don't like too much bass? You've got like more subwoofers.
No. It's not that I don't like too much. What I mean is I don't like to be taken out of the movie and go,
I know.
I noticed the bass.
That's just the irony. I mean. There will be people here watching with 212s going, yeah, it's too much bass. And you're like, I don't want to hear that bass from my 64 or my 21.
That's not what I mean. What I mean is like Top Gun, when they're doing 2 minutes and 15 seconds, when you pan back hear the afterburner coming back through, I want to feel like I'm on an airfield. Right. I don't want to feel like the subwoofers are making noise. I want it to feel immersive. And I don't want to think about and have my brain go subwoofers. It's not what I want. I want
totally. I get it. It's just fun to experience. It's just fun to tease with all that big subwoofer.
Well, you're obviously wrong, Ben. It's fine.
So, yeah, right. And so I would say this is a thing that I think Peter's watching because he made a comment earlier. And Peter made a comment to me a while ago that if we took a whole load of different brands of speakers and put them in a room, hide them behind fabric, layouts the same, would anybody, enthusiast or professional, be able to listen to two speakers and say, I know what that brand is? Or like, would you even in an equally designed and built room be able to tell? I don't like, his point was, if it would like, nobody would be able to sit there and say, I know the brand of those speakers is, because you'll hear differences between them, but you won't really know what those differences are.
Our brains aren't that good.
Right. But I would say from experience, there are some traits of different speakers that I've heard repeatedly in different rooms and different situations that I wouldn't sit in a room and instantly go, I know what that is. But I do know that there are traits that occur. So
given two speakers, you could identify which one was which if you limited the variables. Absolutely.
If you knew what the options were, right?
Yeah.
And if you gave me the choice, like if I knew that we were listening to two systems and one was an Alcons and the other was an Ascendo system, I'd guess which is which every time.
Yeah.
Because I know the traits that are different about those speakers. If I didn't know what I was going and listening to, there's no way I'd say that's an Alcons, that's an Ascendo.
You have a rough idea based on the characteristics and the speaker's capabilities, because there's limited numbers that can do X, Y, or Z things. But I would agree. Yeah.
But if you just put me into a room and just played one brand of speakers and gave me no clue.
No.
Without a reference, like, so the reason I could tell an Ascendo from an Alcons is like where you said you don't want to localize any speaker. I would say with the Alcon system, everything is bigger, right? I end up with this big cloud of sound, right? There's this huge bubble and almost nothing has a direct location, right? Everything feels big and broad and from a general direction.
Yes.
And then there are things that in some tracks, I think, because of other ways I've heard them, my experience, learned experience, whether it's right or not, but from other systems I've heard, I think, well, that's supposed to come from a smaller kind of point of sound. With the Alcons, it still sounds huge. With the Ascendo, I think it goes the other way. Everything is a bit more direct.
Yes.
And some things that are supposed to feel really huge don't quite feel as big as they would on Alcons.
It's always a compromise. You can't really have both because the speaker can't change what it is depending on what the content is. A great example of this, and they're both great speakers. I know this because we just did a rough calibration on these last week. I have Perlisson Black Editions and Kef Blade 1s in a listening area just outside over there. It is very easy. Both the speakers sound objectively fantastic, but it is very easy to identify, even blind, which one is which, because primarily the dispersion is so hugely different.
Right.
The Kef is, wow, it's a lot wider. The Perlisson is a lot more focused, mainly because of its waveguide. So very easy to identify which is which. And I could identify which is which even blind because of that. But if you gave me if you put either one of those in a space and I had no idea which one it was, I could probably think of like what speaker may do that. But even then, there's so many variables. If you consider room reflections and all kinds of other stuff and treatments, if I didn't know that either, it'd be really, really hard to be able to tell.
Right. I am about to pull up. Okay, let's start with this one. I'm about to pull up one of the rooms we looked at in a previous episode.
Do you want to talk about the room that we brought up earlier at all anymore?
Not necessarily. I think, but because at heart that is a real room, so I'm not, and someone may recognize it as having built it or be their room. So all I will say about it is that it's impossible to not know those speakers are there.
But not only that, how would you change that room in order to, anybody that's watching this now, we showed a picture of a room earlier, just rewind so you can get an idea of it. I have some things that I would change that could make that better.
Sure.
Easily.
The thing I don't know is, so I don't know the brief. If there's no reason for the speakers to have been against the back wall, I wouldn't have put the speakers against the back wall. I'd have brought them into the middle of the room, then you could actually surround them with speakers.
Sure.
I don't know the brief. If part of the brief was, my kids want this front area because they're going to play Nintendo Wii if they exist anymore, or I don't know, gaming, right? Or if they're going to do drama productions and they want a place they can do cartwheels and dance, right? I've got small girls, you can see this. That might be completely legit, right? That space may have been left for a completely legit reason.
Sure.
And that seating compromise was a necessity.
But take that idea and that need, crumple it up and throw it out the window and go objectively, theatrical performance. We're going for objectivity.
Yeah.
Move the seats forward.
That seat needed to move a meter forward, yeah.
Yes, and then move the surrounds back so that they're in line or slightly ahead of the seating position, and then probably widen the rear surrounds. Why are they 2 feet apart?
So I can work out why they're 2 feet apart. So when we did RP22, we reframed this idea of using the angles that were in the Dolby guidelines. So if you are working purely to angles and you push the seat, so the seat is only a foot in front of the wall, well, for those angles to work, the speakers end up really, really close. So that's why they end up so close, is because the seat's so close. If you push that seat forward, even those angles, the same angle would have gone broader. Now, the RP22 method is that we use zones. So no surround speaker should be behind the whole of the audience. If it's a surround back, it shouldn't be ahead of any of the audience. So a surround back should not be anywhere like ahead of your last row of seats, because we are rolling back a little bit on the phrase creative intent, but we can be sure if something is mixed exclusively into surround backs, it was meant to sound like it's behind you.
Absolutely.
Like, we can be sure of that. So it should never sound like it was ahead of you if you're sat in the back row and your surround backs are placed too far forward. Like, it was never intended to be ahead of you. In the same way that side surround exclusive content is meant to be to your side, not miles in front or behind you. It's meant to be a side wall position. It's meant to be off the side of you. So anyone can look at RP22. It's a free thing to get if you've not seen it. But this zonal region of putting speakers removes the need to tightly follow angles. I know it's easy to criticize that and say, but Dolby have given us angles for a reason. Let's remember one of the authors of RP22 was head of the Dolby Atmos residential rollout globally. He was head of that project as it rolled out. So we're not going against what Dolby say, because one of the Dolby engineers, like, who was absolutely in charge of that project, was on RP22, and this is, it's in line with their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
They would never have put out RP22 because it's this 150-page book, and the Dolby marketing team were never going to put out this level of complexity. Angles are easy. Anyone can follow them, right? But if you follow them religiously, you can end up like that room with things that are quirky. Once you make one decision that's a bit strange, every other thing follows on. Seats are too close to a wall. Now suddenly all the speakers end up in crazy places.
Yeah.
Which a zonal thing, that zonal method would prevent that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that room, as it came out of that render, and it's not exactly as it looks in real life, right? I've made a version of it. It's less than ideal. But we don't know the brief. But I wouldn't, let's put it this way, I wouldn't want to watch a film in there.
No.
That would not be to my choice.
All right, moving on to your other examples.
I was kind of going to make the same point, I think. So we'll see if that...
That's okay. We can reinforce this because I think it's a very important point.
Let me see if this... Why is that giving me a... I'm trying to share it, and it's coming up telling me it won't share. Have you blocked it?
No.
I'm getting a little eye with a cross through it every time I try and share it.
What's this?
There we go. So this, again, comes from a room that we've built and talked about in other weeks. Mm-hmm. But so we've slightly changed where we're at this week. I know you originally scheduled this week as being about dispersion, and then I threw a spanner in the works to talk about how many speakers. So this came from my week last week. So I had an honor last week of being at Harman's UK head office to present to their European distributor conference. So we keep banging on about how important data is. I just had the opportunity to go back to Harman, where a lot of the data came from Todd Welty's work and Floyd Toole's work and Sean Olive's work, and go back and teach their distributors how to use that data. Really cool fun. And we highlighted a few things and a few questions came up that I think are interesting and important. So this is a 7.1. I forget what we did in the previous episode to delete the front left. But if we look at these surround backs, they've been angled in, but the good bit of that sound inside this cone, and I think, what is that? Let's have a look. We've got horizontal dispersion here of 30 degrees. Let's give it a bit more. Let's give it even 50 degrees. So that's now plus minus 25 degrees. We can go a bit more, because let's find a really wide dispersion speaker. That's now got even coverage. This one that's highlighted in orange, even coverage plus minus 30 degrees. But what realistically are we giving to that back row?
Nothing.
It's not great, is it?
No.
If you're sat to one side, if you're sat in a corner, your head's going to be in a position where you do catch some flack off this surround back. You don't hear the other one at all. If you're sat in the back right, you're not hearing that back left at all. How far would I have to go? Let's push that to 100 degrees. Okay, so plus minus 50 degrees is where you're going to hear it at that angle, and you could twist it and you could adjust it. But
right,
the likelihood is, and this was interesting, I've now seen the data for JBL's new range, and they are really wide dispersion. It's a really nice wide dispersion. Not that wide. I don't really know much, but wouldn't be 15, 20 dB down. By the time it's actually got to this back seat, you just can't hear it. It's going to be, and what you can hear is completely different frequency response to what you're expecting.
You have another problem though now, especially for those outside seats that are sitting near those speakers.
Right.
Hotspotting.
You do. Yeah. So let's do that on, I'm going to delete the backs a minute. Let's just get rid of a couple, and we'll do that with some side ones. I'll put this room back together before we need it.
And while he's doing that, I just want to reinforce this. This is why bigger rooms are typically better, because you remove a lot of that issue with hotspotting. The speaker's further away, you're doubling of distance, the space between that doubling increases. So your ability to hotspot, since the speaker is further away, diminishes. And you lose this is an issue, which is why commercial cinemas and big spaces are able to get away. And a big reason why your guys's the CEDIA levels demand X, Y, or Z parameters in order to be considered an X, Y, or Z level.
Yeah. I mean, so we do that in multiple ways in RP22. One of them is just distance from a sidewall or a speaker baffle. So you want to get away. You want to be at least 0.5 meter from any wall or speaker baffle, the front face for baffle. Moving up as we get to level 3 and 4, we're talking 1.2, 1.5 meters. So suddenly your good listening area is really small in the room. But now I've just extended this out to 5 seats. All right, we know that's a lot for this room. But let's take a little measurement. From the front face of that wall to the ear, should we call it 600 mil? And to the other ear, other side, let's call that 3.8. So one of these speakers is 2 feet from you, and the other is however many feet 3.8 meters is. I mean, some
12
random number of feet and inches.
13.
About that. I'm going to quickly do the maths off screen. So I can calculate, anechoically, I can calculate that by taking the difference in distance. In this case, it was 3.2 meters. You can't do this with feet, just needs to be done in meters, or it's a totally different formula. I'm going to hit my log button, and I'm going to times that by 20. Okay, I get 10.1 dB difference. So this speaker, my surround left, to the nearest seat, I love Christian's just done the conversion for me in feet. Thank you, Christian. 12.4. I still don't know the log formula in feet, so it doesn't really help me. Engineers work in metric. You know, that's just a thing. It's a 10.1 dB difference anechoically if you're sat here to if you're sat here for that speaker. So you've got a problem. Like if you're sat in either of those end seats, dialogue's going to be awful. Like anytime there's anything happening, anytime you've got surround effects, it's going to completely drown out anything that's happening from the front. You're not going to hear the surround to the other side at all. These surround speakers are a real problem if you've squeezed that many seats in. So what are options, Ryan? How are we going to fix that?
Delete seats.
Well, that's an option. We could do that. I was going to say, what happens if we, and let me
move it ahead,
that, paste it in place, move one of them. I'm not going to necessarily fix the angles, but let's take one up to there. Let's take one down to here. What if we did that?
Look at that.
We've had to add more speakers, but we could.
Still not perfectly ideal, but it is much better than it was before.
Yeah, I'm doing this completely on the fly without looking at any angles, right? So let's accept that I'm not going to do this perfectly. So we talked about this on this workshop last week, how this might work. This could give you a benefit with this back, like this one, we could adjust them. We could look at these to maximize the coverage across 2 rows. Like I might choose to aim this one slightly further forward so that the near seat to it is actually off axis on purpose. We could optimize that. Then the question comes, if it is a 7.1 mix and it's not using objects, the bed layer Now we'd have to allocate one of these two as being the main surround speaker. And the main surround, realistically, is supposed to be roughly to the side of you. So I guess I would, by choice, have added these and not lost the middle one. And then as we saw at the start of that video, as objects pan down, what would happen is it would spend less time in any of them. So that object will actually spend less time on this really problematic speaker because it can pan through it, and it's going to now be here, then it will phantom between two. And when it's phantoming, they'll both be playing quieter than if it was one on its own. Then it will be briefly, really briefly, just in that one that's problematic. But then it will drift down and phantom again before it gets to this one. So even though that middle speaker would have been problematic, when we're looking at objects, it's problematic for a shorter amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've got this challenge now that as we add more channels, the likelihood of putting one near to speakers gets higher. Sorry, the likelihood of putting one near a seat starts to get higher. Like as you start filling in corners and you start adding more and more speakers, you are going to get to a point where you do make an individual speaker get worse to a specific seat.
However, this comes back to the design principle of design to the 99%. Do you care about those outside seats? Right? That's another thing to consider is as long as you're designing for the primary use case and not compromising on the 1% use case, is it an issue? In a lot of cases, it won't be.
Right. And I might have said this before. There is a reason it matters to me. So I would say that we specialize in building shared experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I build a room that every seat needs to have a minimum level because I don't want anybody to walk into a room we designed and get an objectively bad performance.
Right, but that's a compromise, right? And that compromise typically is time and money.
Yeah. But like my real concern, and this was a thing, so it came up with JBL last week of why do we care if that seat's bad? Well, you guys as distributors are working with an integrator. You might provide the design to the integrator. The client sits in that seat and it's bad. Who do they blame? Do they now blame the integrator? Do they blame the distributor who helped with the design? Do they blame JBL? And it's not the JBL engineers. Like the guy who designed the speaker did not know how you were going to use it. But the blame is going to flow all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, the only problem is that you've used a good speaker in the wrong way. You've used it in a way and it's too close to a seat. But suddenly that blame travels all the way through that chain. And maybe the person who was speccing the room, like the client said, oh, I don't really care about that back corner.
Mm-hmm.
But if one of my potential future clients sits in that room, I don't want them to say, oh yeah, Cinema Buro designed this room. And then someone sits in an objectively bad seat. And now the view is, we build bad cinemas. So
I agree, but that is a compromise.
Right. Sure. And we would spend a long time explaining these compromises and trying to minimize any terrible, like objectively bad seats.
Yeah.
I think it would be unlikely I would build a room with the back row of seats hard up against that back wall. Like we know it's compromised, but I think we'd find a solution to not inflict that. Even if the client says they don't care, just moving it 0.5 meter, 2 feet off that back wall will make the performance so much better. I don't think I'd ever build this room with those seats there. I just don't think we'd do it.
Yeah.
It's too big a compromise.
Right. Now, we talked a bit about dispersion, and I think it's important now, and I mentioned this to you at the beginning, that we show a dispersion plot, and I want to show how to read that. Because you're talking about these angles, and you're talking about what this is, and I want to make sure that people understand how to read this. Do you have one that you can show real quick?
Let me get one. The one that's most obviously on my desk probably isn't in the public domain yet. So let me find another one. I will have one in 2 seconds. And I'm actually not going to pull up a spinorama. I'm going to pull up a heat map.
Yeah. I think it's real quick to Big Street Cinemas. He's asking why we don't have Super Chat. I don't have 1,000 subs yet. And I'm not after subs. I'm not after this to get famous. We're sitting here Ben and I do this to make sure we're spreading knowledge. But if you guys want us to have some of these options, not necessarily just Super Chats, but there's some other things that we can do that come along with having 1,000 subs, subscribe to the channel because it just allows us to do more in the future. But Big Street Cinema, that is why we don't have that.
So when we start on some questions, we will discuss that, but we're not expecting you to pay us to.
Absolutely not.
We're not a fan of that. We had this a couple of weeks ago. We are not here to charge you money to answer questions. If it's a really complicated question, then potentially it's an offline. And if it's design a full room, there's probably a design fee. But if it's a simple question, we're just going to answer them.
Yes.
So I found this on Audioholic's website on how to read speakers thing. I don't know what that speaker is. It's just a random.
Frankly, it doesn't matter. This will give us the information that you guys need on how to read this, though. Yeah.
So going left to right across that. So the far left-hand side of that image is the low frequencies, and the far right-hand side is really high frequency.
And you can see that at the bottom, given the frequency.
Yeah. So it's important to not assume this is distance. This is a slice showing 3 different metrics, and none of them are distance. I've definitely seen people read this and think that is a distance plot, and it definitely isn't. So the SPL output, the amount of sound level, is represented by the color. The frequency is the movement from left to right, and up and down is degrees off axis. So you could draw a straight line through the middle of this. Can you see my mouse across the screen?
Yep.
Straight through the middle of this would be on axis. They haven't actually given a 0, but it's going to be from in here.
Yep.
What we'd expect to see on this is some fluctuation. It's likely going to start really broad at the bottom because low frequencies are more omnidirectional. It will narrow slightly as the way, there's a relationship from the wavelength to the size of the driver. So as that frequency increases on the same driver, it will become more narrow dispersion. Then you'll probably get a crossover somewhere, and at the crossover, you now move to a smaller driver, and you'll probably get a broadening again. So my guess is here, this 750-ish, where it suddenly gets broader than it was. My gut feeling is there's probably a crossover in there. I might be wrong. I don't know what the speaker is. I've got no idea, but I'm going to guess it's not uncommon to see it narrow then broaden, then narrow and broaden, depending if it's a 2 or 3 way.
I'd probably put it at just around 1,000 where it broadens back out again.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So this looks like a quite well-behaved speaker. It's not doing anything crazy. But obviously this from 5,000 hertz up, we start to get really quite directive. This is narrow dispersion.
Which, to be frank, without a wave, it's to be expected.
Right.
In the higher 100%. Frequency ranges. This is, you expect, as the frequency increases, it to become more narrow. And Ben, you're going to be able to explain this better than I, but this has to do with the relationship between the frequency and the diameter of the emitting driver.
Exactly that. I forget what the exact equation is right now, but it is a direct relationship between wavelength and diameter of the driver.
Yep.
And it is possible to somewhat avoid this. So using specific waveguides, it is possible to get a really broad dispersion into higher frequencies, and there'll probably be a cost to that. So one of the things that happens with this narrowing of dispersion is the sound pressure almost beams further. So the speaker is often likely to appear to have more sensitivity. So it will have more output for the 2.83 volts on the spec sheet if it's more narrow because it's not throwing the sound so wide. It's kind of throwing more of it at you. Often the trade-off, if you want really, really broad, might be a lowering of sensitivity.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. That is a compromise as long as you know what that compromise is.
Right.
And you can handle it in the design. Yep.
But my hearing rolls off way before 20K at the top.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Even if we're looking at, well, let's look at 10. I can hear 10, right?
Yeah.
We're fine there. I'm good to about 15, 16.
I'm in the 17, just under 18 range. But most adults are not going to be anywhere close to 20.
Right. But at 10, we are far more narrow than at 5. But at 5K. So by 10,000 hertz, the best part of this speaker is going to be probably plus minus 20, 25 degrees. Let me see if I can get a good line of that. You won't see me doing this because I'm moving the whole window to try and frame it in my monitor. And because it's on a website, I can't draw a line on it. I reckon actually that's about plus minus 20 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be plus minus 20 degrees to be in that red section up here. And then suddenly, if we've got down to this orange-yellow transition, you can see my mouse on now, we're 10 dB down here. Like this red is 90 dB, the way this has been done. Normally, this would be a relative level. So that would be kind of 0, this would be minus 10, minus 20. But this one's been done as an actual
same info,
level.
Just shown differently.
I guess it probably goes up to 94 at the top, maybe, give or take. But we're at 90 in this red band. We drop down to 80. If you're sat out here, if you're 30, 35, 40 degrees off axis to this speaker, by 7,000 hertz, you are probably pushing, what do you reckon? Getting towards 15 dB. We're kind of moving from this yellowy, greeny area.
12, somewhere in there, 13 dB down.
So that's massive. It's like, that's massive. As you come off axis, you lose this huge amount of output. But we're going to cut back now to our other screen. 1 second. Let me replace this with my other screen. So if we imagine this round back that we were talking about earlier, let's rotate it so it's kind of angled at the front seats a bit. Ta-da. And we just said that fall off up around 7,000 hertz was happening plus minus 30-ish. Right. So I can set this to 60. That now represents the area. This orange triangle represents the area that is kind of, and I may be being overly generous there. We're already by this point.
Usually you are, not you, but your speakers are going to be more narrow typically than you think they are. And
even off that map we just looked at, like this is the point by here, by the bottom of that triangle we've got now. And that's actually a cone. If you looked at it in 3D, it's actually a cone. The dispersion is, in this case now, different vertically because I haven't entered it, but you need to look at this vertically and horizontally.
You do, absolutely. And it's important to how Ben got to this number. Plus or minus 30 is 30 degrees both directions, left and right, off of the center point. And that's, add those together, 60 degrees is your total dispersion.
So in Vectorworks, you'll see in a speaker, I can type in 60 and it tells me I'm getting plus minus 30. I can, in this software, do asymmetrical speakers. Somewhere I've got a tick box for that. Asymmetrical dispersion. I could make them asymmetrical and have it off axis. If I was using a speaker which is asymmetrical, think of something like a M&K, 3 tweeters down one side, 2 woofers the other.
Yep.
That dispersion will be asymmetrical. It behaves differently one side to the other. I can, in this software, I could model that in that way in my drawings. So we're now like at 60 degrees, it's plus minus 30. So
we're going to come back to that asymmetrical part because there's actually a question about SBIR, which comes into that.
Yeah. In this seat, where the head is, you are probably now 15 dB down from the on-axis sound. And that's beneficial and problematic at the same time. So you're close to it, so it's kind of beneficial when it's rolled off. But if you remember how that heat map looked, it's only rolled off from 5, 6, 7K up. So you're still in the range, certainly on that speaker, by 500 hertz, you would still be in its like full range sound. So what you've really got now is this speaker is going to be excessively loud up to 750 hertz. And then moving from 750 on up, it progressively falls off a cliff as that directivity narrowed. So you now have kind of the worst of all worlds. It still sounds loud at some frequencies. It now sounds too quiet at others. You've got this completely skewed frequency response. It won't be shrill and deafening in that way because you can't hear the top end of it, but it's not a good experience in any way. There are times, so this is interesting. There are times where I might use that. Let's move this speaker off a little bit. Let's take a kind of over here. I'm going to try and find a broader speaker. So let's pretend I've now found something that is quite even to plus minus 50. I might find a really wide dispersion speaker and tuck it in a certain place where I can now cover everything. So I can't pretend that I'm going to specify this speaker until I know where I'm going to put it. Like I have to put the seats in first, then I have to place the speakers, then I can go and choose what those speakers are going to be. If we chose a Ascendo Black Swan to go there,
wouldn't work.
It would be a shit show. I mean, you say it wouldn't work. I'd say it'd be awful because a Black Swan.
We said the same thing in different ways. Let's be
real. I said it the English way. Shit show. A Black Swan is. I'm being generous, maybe, to say it's at 20 plus minus 20.
Super narrow.
Yeah. Okay. Like, let's go. It's not going to work as a surround speaker like that. It actually needs a long throw because if you give it a long throw, it has a chance to broaden out and hit the range you want. So you want to sit further away from a Black Swan, and suddenly now it covers a broad range. I don't know exactly. I've called it plus minus 10. It obviously isn't quite like that, but it's pretty narrow. You want a longer range to a speaker like that. I wouldn't use one as a surround speaker. Let's be fair.
No, unless you had a huge room.
Oh yeah, right. If the room was 15 meters wide.
And this goes back to the design principle that you were talking about earlier with sensitivity. If you have a hugely directive speaker, it's probably going to measure more sensitive because the sound is concentrated in that space instead of being spread out.
Right.
It's like taking a squirt gun, right? If I can concentrate the spray instead of spreading it out, that small spray, like putting it on a pressure washer, has a lot more power and pressure behind it if it's finitely concentrated instead of spreading it out. So it's able to go further than it would spread out. Same principle applies.
Exactly that. So we need to make this decision now of how many speakers we're going to put around this area, what dispersion we want them to have.
Before we do that, I want to show just another way to read, to get an idea of what dispersion is in a different plot.
Yep. The floor is yours.
So horizontal frequency response, and you can kind of get this if you look at what Ben showed you earlier. You can rewind. If you look at say you're on axis, it's a little bit difficult because the reds kind of blend together. But if you really did this or asked a machine to do it, it could probably come up with a frequency response very similar to this based on that heat map. The data's there. It's just represented in a different way, right?
Yeah,
so what we're doing here is we're showing that information in a different way. We won't talk about what the speaker is, but you can see, and I just wanted to show this because this is an easier way to see what it's doing at a given frequency and what SPL range it is. So as we move down, you can see the energy. Let me do this. You can see the energy falling off, right? So as you move more off axis, you're getting less and less and less energy as you come down. Now, Ben and I can look at this and go, we know exactly what type of speaker this is because
it's
of
a coax
this right here. This is endemic of coax speakers in the waveguide and how the tweeter situated in the middle of the coax interacts with the waveguide, which is the woofer. And this will change based on the size of the tweeter, the size of the woofer that it's using as a waveguide. But this is a design principle. This is how they work. So this is a given with virtually every coax that exists. You know this going in. But I just wanted to show that this is another way to look at, especially as you get to higher frequencies, when the beam starts to narrow, look at what happens to the energy coming down. You lose a lot more as opposed to more of the omnidirectional sound at the lower frequencies. So again, just another way to visualize the same data to try and get an idea of how a speaker is behaving.
Yep. And then if you can combine the same one with vertical, if you've got a riser, so if you're doing a dedicated room with a riser, that becomes really important, that you're going to choose where to put that sound. And that might mean determining how high up the wall you put your LCR. It might be... Apologies, my phone's ringing.
A very well-behaved horizontal dispersion speaker. And you're going to see which one this is. And I don't think, I mean, this is expected behavior. I can't hide this one. Let's do this. So this is horizontal dispersion, vertical dispersion. It's a KEF Q11 meta. The driver is a coaxial, but you have woofers that are starting to get into this. And this, I think a big part of this comes into, would you agree, SBIR, boundary interaction, the fascia of the speaker and everything, and how that's reacting, and the angle of the speaker, and all different kinds of variables are changing how that vertical dispersion plays out.
Yeah, I need to look at that speaker and see what it looks like, because I don't even know what that speaker looks like. Okay, it's a traditional looking speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is expected behavior.
Yeah. So part of why I imagine that's doing what it's doing is we've got this crossover. So you've got, is that a three-way? So I'm guessing you've got two of these units. There's three units that look the same, give or take, on the front of that. I'm guessing two of them are bass, one's mid-bass, and then you move to the... No, that's not true, is it? They're going to be three bass on that.
Three bass, yes.
Then
3 6.5 inch,
right.
And then the 3/4 inch bended aluminum dome tweeter.
I've got it.
I mean, it's a coax at the top, so it kind of is. In a way,
if you go back to its dispersion, that where it transitions to the mid, which will be where this real narrowing is happening, that's quite close to the top of the cabinet. It's quite almost equidistant to the top of the cabinet and the sides of the cabinet. It's, you know, all that section is almost in a cube shaped box, like it's pretty much equal sides and top. I imagine that's having some impact on the narrowing of that frequency. Hey, it's a design. They've chosen a design. I kind of say there's no bad speakers. There's just speakers used in the wrong applications.
I mean, frankly, this would happen to most towers, depending on the tweeter placement. If the tweeter's towards the top of the cabinet, because of boundary interaction, you're going to get some change in how the sound is behaving due to reflections.
Right.
So,
and I guess my guess is that have we got a spinorama for that?
Which part?
I was expecting this to be quite a bass heavy speaker, but it's actually not. I'm surprised by that.
There's the 2034.
Yeah, I'm slightly surprised. I would have maybe slightly misread the other data.
I mean, there is a bump.
Yeah. I think that kind of shows up in that just uniformly dark red section, but is really broad. Before it then, like, you can see that the floor ceiling bounce is going to be part of the reason that we get this big blue bit vertically. And that, if you scroll up, you will see on the vertical this huge cut. where there's no bounce. Oh, that's a rear wall. Okay, actually, that's not such a problem. Where's the floor and ceiling? Okay.
No, that's ceiling bounce right there.
Right. Yeah.
So that's to be expected.
Yeah. But that's what causes some of that directivity. Yeah.
Yep. That's right there.
Yeah.
So these all correlate, ladies and gentlemen. They all, when you understand how these measurements are taken and how to read them, you can see interactions from one graph into another. And it allows you to really understand what is going on and what part of that speaker is creating that issue so that you can better apply it and or mitigate if needed, though we try and not have to deal with mitigations as much as possible due to the selections we make, any issues or non-issues that come up inside of a space. So it's important, in my opinion, to look at the data multidimensionally so that you really understand what is going on to make sure that things are properly integrated. This isn't a bad speaker. This is a good speaker. It's just understanding what it's doing in order to properly implement it objectively, or at least as much as possible. Now, talking about SBIR, I do want to go back to Macro Proxy's question here. Let me stop sharing. How big of a deal is SBIR with on-wall speakers? Is it worth considering the in-wall version of the same speaker if it's a wide dispersion speaker? This is kind of what we were just talking about with the top half of the speaker and boundary and the reflection interaction of that. In-walls depend very heavily in a design, because of how they're designed, on that boundary interaction. And if they don't get that, especially at low frequencies, they're going to sound very thin because they need that reflected sound to reinforce the directly emitted sound. And if you take that away, I'm not saying that's what you're doing. This is just something that needs to be considered. If you take that away, it's going to sound very thin in that it's not going to have the SPL at those lower frequencies. So as long as you can take that into consideration and build and implement to that, you're going to be fine. Ben, you seem like you have something to show.
Yeah, I'm just seeing if I could find somewhere I have a whole load of graphs that shows you what happens with different shape cabinets, but I'm not sure I can find it. Can I find those images? Maybe not. So different shape cabinets will have an effect. And it's why designers choose to do different things. You know, there are some brands who make spherical speakers because they're planning the SBIR effect of that, and they mitigate it in crossover, and they've got benefits, pros and cons of it. What I would say with most on walls is that the wavelengths affected, by the time you get, like, depending on how far that speaker really sticks off the wall, like, it's probably going to be like an on-wall cinema speaker might be a foot, if not less. A lot of them, like, I think of some, you know, classic on-wall speakers that are broader, taller for the high output cinema needs.
Like, let's take the classic one of a JBL 70J1, which was seen a lot of times in commercial cinemas. It's used by a lot of enthusiasts. It's an on-wall speaker. It sits out about 8 inches to a foot. I can guarantee that JBL designed with that boundary interaction in place.
Absolutely.
No question.
Yeah, I'm going to fail to find the graph.
Would you worry about
I'll find them for another one. So I would say there's a pro and con to it. That if it's an on-wall, it will have been measured on a flat baffle. If it's an in-wall, it's going to be the same thing. Now, if it's an in-wall and you want to angle that at the audience, you're going to have to build a false wall that angles it. And you can use an SBIR calculator to see how wide that piece of baffle needs to be to maintain the original intended tonality of that speaker. With an on-wall, you might just choose to angle out, like, depending on how you mount it, you could be hanging it, you could be putting it on a bracket. You've got more option to rotate that and get it in the right place. I would personally rather get the speaker angled in the right direction than worry about some of the SBIR effect that it will have. When we're like, if we were coming really far out, if we were a meter away from the wall, things are a bit different. But if we're talking a foot, not really any more than that, to me, it's more important to get it angled in the right place.
Yes.
That's recognize
that you are changing its performance, but the benefits that you're gaining from the angle outweigh the loss of SPL consistency due to, on an on-wall situation, that. Now, if you're talking about just having an on-wall versus an in-wall, if it's the same speaker, I think the variance is going to be menial. There will be, because the on-wall, the speaker's going to sit out a couple inches, and it is measurable. But as far as you noticing, if they're at the same angle, I don't know that you would notice.
I'm going to show you because I found some diagrams. Right. So this, I think you need to approve that to share, Ryan.
Oh my God, you're so needy.
I know. Right. Let me zoom in 1 second. Window view, zoom in. Can you see that? Is that good enough?
Zoom.
Zoom in.
Zoom.
Okay.
Zoom.
So how's that now? Any better?
Give me one more.
We are now on the trueaudio.com website here. If we have a perfectly spherical speaker, we can see the effect of the diffraction loss around that cabinet. So we can see at different frequencies the roll-off we get as that, like the losses from that. This is really easy to build a crossover that compensates that. Like, that's a really nice, smooth transition.
Very consistent.
Yeah, it would be a really easy bit of crossover design to counteract the effect of that. If you put it on the end of a cylinder, yeah, that's not so ideal. We've now got the effects that happened on each corner, so the diffraction that occurs on each side of this. If we put the driver bang in the middle of the face of that, on every side, every direction it goes out to an edge is the same distance. So every issue essentially gets multiplied and you have the same effect. They are slightly less bad in a box because actually now the distance to the corner is very slightly different to the distance to the top. So actually they broaden in width, but they aren't as tall, they're not as pronounced or acute. Put them in a rectangular box, and now we've got a completely different distance to the bottom of that speaker, and you'll see that now these become less pronounced. So the choice of where you put the driver on that box and the shape of that box absolutely affect the diffraction losses you'll get around the cabinet. And with a lot of speakers, the designer of a speaker is going to try and mitigate this. Sometimes it's impossible, and that will show up in the data. Sometimes a really clever crossover and a well-designed shape and using dispersion guides and wave guides, they can mitigate most of these issues. Then what we do is take that speaker and put it on a wall or in front of a wall, and we don't point it straight. So now we then affect, like if we made this speaker an on wall and we tilted it, we're actually now changing the behavior from one side to the other. On the side we've tilted it, it's going to hit a sidewall and reflect back some more, and it's open on another side, and we've changed its distance to the wall. So we're changing this response.
Yep.
As soon as we put it on a wall, like flat, it will do what the designer intended. And once we tilt it, we are going to change this response. But I would still say I would take that, which can potentially be EQ'd. We're never going to, like, we can't EQ without some detrimental effect. Every EQ we apply has some negative effects. Like we fix the frequency domain, we lose some microharmonics, some dynamics, we impact the phase response, the timing. Like we can't, EQ is not free. So the effects we cause by putting that on-wall speaker with a tilt and fixing it with EQ, we cause some other problems. But to me, those problems are less than just sticking that speaker straight in completely the wrong direction and hoping that we can EQ all of that out. And it might be like that heat map we saw earlier. If you had put that product that had the heat map, like the 30-degree window, if you'd used it like as a front wide and your seats are all 60, 70, 80, 90 degrees off axis, well, what happens when you auto EQ it, right? It puts these massive boosts, 6, 7, 8 dB. Well, the effect that has not only on reduced headroom, but completely changing like the phase characteristics of that. Like it just it changes everything.
Well, then it's going to get doubly worse if you're using something like ART, because now you're reinforcing even further for support frequencies, and it's you've got to find what is the lesser of two evils, right?
Yeah.
What compromise are you okay living with in order to overcome another one? Nothing is free. You're giving up something. Sometimes that thing is money, but even then, if you're spending more, a lot of times you're like, the Black Swan is a perfect example of this. It is an amazing speaker, but it is insanely narrow for its frequency response range. So if you can exist in that limited range, great. But the compromise is if you're outside of that, not the choice for you.
Right.
That's going to
it either works. It works or it doesn't. And the key is using the right product in the right way.
Right. Another great example of this is Perlisten, right? And they themselves will say, if you get outside of our distance for big rooms, probably not the best speaker for this, because you're going to run into limitations of said speaker.
Yeah, and we're talking really big rooms. I mean,
big rooms, yes.
Big Perlistens, 7Ts are good
600 watts.
Right? They are good in big rooms. We sometimes work in massive rooms.
Yes.
Like, let's not confuse someone who has a normal domestic sized room and think, oh, well, I've got a big room. Like when we talk about big rooms, I mean, the last room we just put swans in, I could take my entire house, literally all of my house, the whole thing, a 3-bedroom house, it would fit inside that client cinema, right? When we talk about big rooms, we're talking about really big rooms.
Yeah. All right.
That would not have been the best place to put a Perlisten at the levels the client wanted to listen. It wouldn't have filled that space.
Absolutely
the current Perlistens. Maybe one day there'll be bigger ones.
Maybe one day. But that's a design choice.
We can just wrap that SBIR up. That in theory, the designer should have correctly factored in the baffle step diffraction with the crossover design as they made it. We're going to introduce some more and combine that with SBIR as we mount it. For me, I would suck up the SBIR issues and the extra baffle step that we create to get the right angle. And if that means you need to use an on-wall over an in-wall to get it angled in the right way, do it.
I agree. All right,
if you can build a big angled wall, like if you've got complete control of construction, in-wall's got some benefits.
Last question. Big Street Cinema, 5.2 meter by 7 meter, 7.5 meter with baffle wall, 4 meter widescreen, 1 row, 3 seats. Seats are placed 60% from the screen. Where's your starting point for bed layer? No super chat option. Stream can't support it. Do you know what he's asking?
Yeah. I think he's asking, where would we start positioning these speakers? So I'm going to get in my 7.1 layout first. And with 1 row, I would want my side surrounds behind. Let's do it. Oh, it's 9.1. Okay. He's already at 9.1. So he's already starting there. I'm going to bring up a room. Let's bring up a room and we'll sort of talk through that process. So how big's that room and how far off out? Where are these dimensions again? 5.2
meters by 7.
How big is this room we've got pre-drawn? It's not miles off that, I don't think. Oh, hold on. Took the wrong measurement. Okay, we're at 5 wide. So we're not far off there. And I think we're at only 6 long. Okay. Let me delete that back row of seats. So I would definitely want my surround slightly behind the seats. I wouldn't want to, I think there was a point made in the chat, but probably Christian earlier, that if you're hoping to do, let me move that. If you're hoping to do that and fire it straight down the row of seats, that's great until someone sits there. That's not my favorite thing. I would like to get. Oh, do we not have the shed? Okay, it is now.
But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So
firing into
what you can see on screen now, this is not my preferred choice. I think that's just going to fail once you put people in the other seats. So I would take it the closest distance back that we can cover every seat with clear line of sight. And you've kind of just got to map that out. But I want to get from every person clear line of sight to this speaker. And the minimum distance I can go back from that seat to achieve that is kind of where I'd want to put it. The front wide position, I would do how RP22 suggests, and that is not the same at all as what Dolby suggests. So RP22 requires us to put this speaker as close to the edge of a screen as possible. So the screen should be a suitable size based on the viewing angle you like. Hopefully that's going to be high 50s to low 60s. That makes this decision either we're going just inside the screen or we're going just outside the screen, depending on the size screen you chose. Let's say we're going just inside the screen.
Now you're talking about left front, correct?
Yeah. So this one I'm moving. That choice of inside or outside the screen area. Like, it is possible if you've got a smallish screen that you could be doing an acoustically transparent screen and still want to put your left and right outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
That to me would suggest the screen's too small, but it might work out that you want to be slightly outside.
Bigger is more better.
Right. And the key is as close to the edges as possible. That will give you the best image to sound coherence. I don't want to see speakers way off, nowhere near the screen. That's not going to give you the best coherence. So then Dolby would have an angle to put these front wides, but we don't. We're going to draw a line from tweeter to tweeter, find the halfway point to that line, which I am now at here, draw that back to my seat, and I can extend it. And that is the correct position for that front wide to go. Right there. Let me spin it around. And that is now the median angle. And that means that the angle we have now is not the same on both sides of that. We've not just split the angle, we've split the halfway distance between them. And it is exactly halfway on that straight line between them. That's the place to put a front wide. And that will give you a really even pan as things come off the screen wall and start to pan down to the side. We've split that distance, so it's going to make the most even pan. If we just follow angles depending on the room dimensions, you can end up with front wides. I've seen this loads of times. Front wides kind of up here. What's the point? You've panned from off the screen to your front wide, and then you've got this massive gap to the surround. That's not what we want to use them for. We want to even out that pan off the screen before it gets to surround. Median angle is the way to place those. So you can't place a front wide until you've placed the front left and the surround left, because you have to then split the difference. So that has to come after the surround. And then let me go on, see, grab another one. So my surround back, this is quite easy with just one row, because my requirements are that this side speaker is to the side of people and my rear speaker is to the rear of people. It's going to work out quite easy to do it. The key issue for me with the number of seats is the same as we talked about zonally. Ideally, I want to keep my left speaker to everybody's left. It would be a if you put this many seats in it, would be a challenge, because that means I've got to go out wide of a listening area, we're probably going to end up with a compromise here. Like if you put that many seats in, the best plan would be to not have that many seats. How many seats did we have in this question, Ryan?
3.
Oh, that's easy. So let's get our 3 seats roughly. And I think this is about 6% back. I think that line probably is 60%. So we're kind of right in the right place. So where I would now bring this to is just to the outside of those seats, so that is definitely going to sound on the left of everybody. My duplicate would be to right. You can push it out, but I don't want to come inside this vertical angle. I want to be to the left of all of those seats, if ideally. So I'm kind of in there. I am actually going to now make a decision. Let's just delete all the other ones. This is going to be where we make a decision where we're going to point it. So let's get rid of all of this. If I point that speaker perfectly at the at the reference seat, let's grab my thing so I can spin this. So if I point it perfectly at the reference seat, on this layout, it actually is going to be okay. Both of these seats fall within, like we're just within that arc for both seats. But there are times when that doesn't work so well. So let's just say we were over here. What I might choose to do is not angle perfectly at the middle. There are times when I'm going to look at the whole of this cone and I'm going to adjust this to get the most coverage of that listening area. Let me extend that and see how that extends out. Not that long. So I want to try and keep as many seats. This works more when you've got more rows of seats. If I duplicate those, so I move those back to there and I move those forward. So I now, in this case, probably wouldn't be pointing this directly at the RSP to get the shared experience. Like that now is a problem to me because 2 of these seats are terrible and all of those are fine. I could adjust this to bring it round, keep this one just in. I'm getting much closer on this one. I'd look for a layout position now that lets me get the most seats inside that arc. And the reality is that just doesn't a wide enough dispersion speaker. So I'd need a bigger one. 40 might do it. Let's just say it's the ones I worked with last week. Right, they're really broad. So now I can choose to adjust this. If I go about there, I'm not pointing it directly at my reference seat, but every single seat is within that plus minus. So like, if this has a plus minus 30-degree dispersion area, I can keep every seat in the same kind of frequency response. It's a trade-off. So my reference seat is now a few degrees off. I could make the reference seat slightly better by bringing it to here at the expense of this one getting much worse and having some of the good sound being wasted when no one's sat. So that balance comes from finding the optional area, like the optimal area. With 1 row of seats, it should be really easy. You're going to pretty much always find a place where you can cover all of them from outside the listening area. So in about here. So that's kind of my process, is starting with those surrounds, getting them positioned and angled so that outside of the area the seats are, and angled to get the maximum coverage. Then the front wide goes in last.
So I guess using that last example, having more speakers, as long as they fall within making the experience better, using the procedure, in my opinion, that you just outlined, if you can do that and you're not compromising on the quality of speaker, you're not compromising on the room, you're not making those compromises, you should have a net positive.
Yeah, and that's the key, is all of these additional speakers are to make pan smoother and the immersion bubble feel more coherent.
Yep.
And it will fall off as you move out away from that reference seat.
Mm-hmm.
Like we noticed it here. If you're sat in that perfect middle seat, that bubble is just beautiful. And it doesn't take a lot, 2 feet to the side of it, and it is slightly diminished. So the more speakers you get in there correctly placed, the more flexibility you've got. Like the more, if you move a couple of feet from a perfect space, it doesn't collapse. So with one seat in the room, you can, a fairly low channel count, you can make work really well. It's as you add more seats to keep improving it for edge cases, you're going to need more.
Yeah.
And then just making that bubble bigger and like more coherent.
Yep. I agree. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. We are out of questions. So we will wrap it up from there. We will be back next Monday.
Oh, we might not be. I haven't told you.
We might not be.
Okay. I'm probably on a plane the next 2 Mondays in a row.
Well,
because I
won't be back on Monday.
Poorly.
I may do something on my own then.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So yeah, either you do something on your own on Monday, or I will try and maybe find someone to guest for you. Maybe we'll put a guest in.
Yeah, Big Street. Send me a message, and we'll get you taken care of.
Yeah,
we'll make sure you're good to go. And that goes for everybody. If you guys have or need anything, do not hesitate to reach out. We can get you taken care of. I can't promise that it'll be free because a lot of this stuff, depending on how far down the rabbit hole we want to go, does take a tremendous amount of time. And money's a compromise, right? So, but if you do need help, do not hesitate to reach out. If it's quick, it'll be free. But anyway, we will see what's going to happen on Monday. May or may not see Ben. May or may not see somebody else. You will see me regardless. But until then, guys, stay safe. Enjoy that home theater journey. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Have a good one.
Cheers, guys.